What's true happiness? Listen to the conversation and learn the English words to talk about it.
So this is the much talked about cafe dialogue. I have to admit, I was half expecting it to be overrated, but this ambiance is something else entirely.
Tell me about it. They've curated the space beautifully. It strikes that perfect balance between chic and inviting, which is surprisingly hard to come by.
You've hit the nail on the head. It's a certain understated elegance. The place feels authentic, not just manufactured for social media.
Precisely. Well, I suppose the final verdict rests on the coffee. I'm certainly not averse to putting their reputation to the test. Shall we grab a seat?
Look at him. The way he measures the beans, the specific pressure he applies, the focus as he pours the milk. It's a whole process, a ritual. It feels like a metaphor for what I've been trying to do with my own life these past few years.
That's a very apt analogy. How so?
Because I feel like I've sourced the best possible ingredients. I've got the single origin beans of mindfulness, the ethically sourced self-compassion, the perfectly filtered water of a values-based life. I've followed the recipe, but the resulting brew is often inconsistent. Some days it's rich and complex, but on others it's just bitter. There's this lingering, acidic taste of dissatisfaction.
You've perfected the technical setup, but the experience feels hollow.
Exactly. It feels like I'm performing wellness rather than experiencing it. I've intellectualized the entire process to the point where I'm constantly checking my own emotional temperature. It's exhausting. The paradox is that in my meticulous effort to engineer happiness, I've crowded out any chance for it to arise spontaneously.
What you're describing is a critical turning point. It's the moment you realize that the popular conception of happiness as a consistently pleasant emotional state, or hedonia, is a flawed and ultimately unsatisfying goal. You're trying to capture steam in a bottle. The more you pursue the feeling, the more it eludes you. Perhaps the problem isn't your ingredients or your technique, but your entire paradigm.
My paradigm. Explain what you mean by that.
We've been operating under a modern Western framework that treats happiness as a product to be consumed. Let's borrow from the ancient Greeks. They had a different, more robust concept, eudaimonia. It's often translated as happiness, but that's a poor rendering. It's closer to human flourishing, or the state of excellence that comes from living a virtuous life. It's not about the taste of the coffee, it's about the art and skill of the barista. Happiness, the feeling, is merely the aroma that arises from a well-crafted process, not the goal itself.
Eudaimonia, so a shift from a state of feeling to a state of being, from a consumable product to a lifelong craft. But isn't virtue just as abstract and hard to define as happiness?
It can be, but the Stoics made it incredibly practical. They would argue that the path to eudaimonia is paved with the understanding of one fundamental principle, the dichotomy of control. There are things within our control and things outside of it. The quality of the coffee beans, the mood of the other customers, whether the machine suddenly breaks, all external, all ultimately uncontrollable.
I know the concept. It sounds like a recipe for passivity. Just accept a bitter cup of coffee if that's what life serves you.
On the contrary, it's the ultimate recipe for agency. The Stoics would say the only things in our control are our judgments, our intentions, our values, and our responses. In our metaphor, the barista can't control the beans, but he has absolute control over his focus, his skill, his precision, his dedication to the craft. That is his inner citadel. True freedom isn't the ability to control the harvest, but the ability to master your craft so that you can create the best possible outcome with whatever beans you're given.
So when I feel that bitterness of anxiety, the eudaimonic approach isn't to add the sugar of a breathing exercise simply to mask the taste, but to use that bitterness as a signal to refine my technique. to ask myself which virtue, courage, wisdom, patience I need to practice in this moment.
Precisely. You shift the focus from alleviating a symptom to building your skill as a craftsman of your life. The anxiety is a property of the raw materials. Your response, your choice to act in accordance with your values despite the anxiety, is your craft. It's not about feeling happy, it's about being an excellent human being. And paradoxically, that is where a deep, unshakable sense of satisfaction resides.
But this feels like an impossibly high standard, to be a master craftsman in every moment. It begs the question, is this just a sophisticated mental game we played to endure a harsh reality, or is there something tangible happening?
That's where modern neuroscience provides a fascinating validation for this ancient wisdom. The concept you're looking for is neuroplasticity. Our brains are not fixed entities. They are constantly being rewired by our thoughts and experiences. When you repeatedly choose a skillful, virtuous response over a reactive, clumsy one, you're physically altering your brain structure.
How so?
Think of your internal monologue of anxieties and ruminations. Neurologically, this is largely the activity of the default mode network, or DMN. It's the brain's baseline state of unfocused, self-referential thought. Practices like the deep focus of that barista have been shown to decrease activity in the DMN. Simultaneously, they strengthen the prefrontal cortex, the area responsible for executive functions, like emotional regulation and reasoned decision-making. So every time you practice that stoic pause, choosing your response instead of reacting, you are literally weakening the neural pathways of anxiety and strengthening the pathways of your craft.
So eudaimonia isn't just a philosophy, it's an active process of self-directed neurobiological change. The master barista isn't just a metaphor, it's a tangible neurological state you build over time through deliberate practice.
Exactly, which leads to the next level of dealing with those bitter thoughts and feelings. It's not enough to just be compassionate with your inner critic. At an advanced level, you must learn to cognitively reframe and defuse from it.
Diffusion, as in separating the flavor from the substance.
In a way, it comes from acceptance and commitment therapy, or ACT. It's the realization that thoughts are just thoughts. A thought like, I am a failure, can feel like an overwhelming, all-consuming bitterness. Cognitive diffusion is the ability to step back and analyze it like a connoisseur. Ah, a note of failure. Interesting. It's strong, but it's just one note in a complex flavor profile. You acknowledge the thought without identifying with it. You see it for what it is, a string of words, a collection of electrical impulses.
But what if the bitterness is justified? What if I genuinely did fail at something significant? Isn't just labeling it a note a form of denial?
An excellent point. That's where you combine diffusion with radical acceptance. You don't deny the reality, you accept the facts. Yes, the espresso shot was pulled incorrectly, I failed at this task. You also accept the emotions that come with it. I am feeling disappointment. You allow those feelings to be present without fighting them. The part you diffuse from is the narrative your mind builds on top of it. And therefore, I am a terrible barista and will never make a good cup of coffee. You accept the reality and the feeling, but you unhook from the catastrophic story.
So accept the objective data and the subjective emotion, but challenge the subjective narrative. That's a very precise operation. It requires a high degree of self-awareness.
It does. It requires mindfulness to even notice the story as it's being written. And it requires courage. This leads us to the existential dimension of all this. If the goal is to be a master craftsman of life, who provides the blueprint? This brings us back to purpose, but on a much deeper level.
You mean the whole creating your own meaning problem? If there's no universal recipe for a perfect life, then doesn't that make all of this a self-contained game with no real stakes?
Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor, addressed this directly. He said, ultimately, man should not ask what the meaning of his life is, but rather must recognize that it is he who is asked. Meaning isn't a recipe you find, it's a unique dish you create. Frankl identified 3 primary ways: through creating a work or doing a deed, through love and connection, and, most importantly, by the attitude we take towards unavoidable suffering.
The attitude towards suffering? Most wellness philosophies are about creating a perfectly smooth, sweet latte. This sounds like it's embracing the bitterness of the espresso.
It is. A eudaimonic life is not a life devoid of bitterness. It is a life where bitterness and pressure are integrated and seen as essential for extracting the richest flavor. Think of the espresso machine. It uses immense pressure and heat to create something wonderful. Frankl's work suggests that personal growth, qualities like courage, resilience, and compassion, are forged in the heat and pressure of adversity. To wish for a life without problems is to wish for a weak, flavorless brew.
So the stoic acceptance of the beans we're given, the cognitive reframing of the bitter notes, and Frankl's idea of finding meaning in the high-pressure moments, they all point to the same conclusion, that the process, the pressure, the heat, the challenges is what creates the value.
The obstacles are the process. And the final, most profound step is to look beyond your own cup altogether. All the tools we've discussed are still, to some degree, focused on perfecting your own craft. The deepest form of well-being seems to arise from moments of transcendence.
Transcendence. That sounds mystical. Are we leaving the cafe now?
Not at all. It's the experience of ego dissolution, where your sense of being a separate individual coffee drinker diminishes, and you feel profoundly connected to the entire cafe. It's the shared warmth, the quiet hum of conversation, the collective experience. It's the awe you feel appreciating the barista's art, not as a consumer, but as a fellow human appreciating an act of creation. It's the deep empathetic connection when you truly listen to a friend's story over coffee, and for a moment your own problems cease to exist.
I've felt glimpses of that. Sometimes in a really great conversation, or when I'm completely lost in a book in a place like this. The internal monologue about my own brew stops, and there's just a feeling of being part of this shared human warmth. It's a very peaceful feeling.
That is precisely it. Those moments are powerful reminders that our ego, the source of so much of our striving and comparison, is not the entirety of our being. Actively seeking out experiences of awe, engaging in deep selfless service, or simply being present in a shared human space are all practical ways to cultivate these transcendent states. It's the final shift from, how good is my coffee, to how wonderful is it to be here in this cafe, sharing this moment.
So the entire journey has been a process of deconstruction. First, deconstructing the idea that happiness is a consumable product. Then, deconstructing the idea that it's just a pleasant feeling. Then, deconstructing our bitter narratives. And now, deconstructing the self-centered drinker. What's left?
What's left is the craft itself, the verb, not the noun, not happiness, but the act of living eudaimonically. It is the continuous moment-to-moment practice of choosing a skillful response over a reactive one. It is the courage to work with bitter ingredients and transform them into something meaningful. It is the wisdom to know what you can control, your craft, and what you cannot, and it is the humility to find joy not just in your own cup, but in the shared warmth of the entire cafe.
So it's not about brewing the one perfect cup of happiness. It's about becoming a master barista of the soul.
Now you're ready to start brewing.
Thank you for watching. If you have any questions, just leave a comment.